Chosen one. Pause for a moment and listen with your heart. This message is not for the weak, the comfortable, or the distracted. This is for the warrior whose life felt like a battlefield, whose nights were filled with silent tears, and whose faith was tested in ways words could never explain. There comes a moment in the journey of Allah's chosen servant where the trial becomes so intense that even the unseen realm bears witness, not because Allah did not know what you would do, but because what you chose in that moment exceeded every expectation of patience, restraint, and loyalty. When you were pushed to the edge, when breaking was justified, when retaliation felt deserved, you did something different, something rare, something powerful. What you did in secret, while wounded and alone, became a turning point written in destiny. Today, we uncover the 7 powerful warrior lessons behind that moment, the lessons that prove you were never ordinary, never forgotten, and never abandoned by Allah. Chosen one. There were moments when even the strongest hearts would have collapsed, when the pressure was so intense that breaking would not have been a failure, but a reasonable human response, yet you remained standing, while everything inside you was trembling, and that alone separates you from the ordinary. When betrayal came from those you trusted, when injustice wrapped itself around your name, when your silence was misunderstood as weakness and your patience was mocked, you still did not abandon Allah, you still did not curse your destiny, and you still did not allow despair to poison your faith. You cried where no one could see, you bled in places no one noticed, yet you guarded your salah, your dua, and your adab with Allah as if they were your last lifeline. This is what shocked the unseen. Not that you suffered, but that you suffered with discipline, that you endured pain without losing submission, that you were pushed to the edge of collapse and chose obedience over rebellion. Many worship Allah when life is gentle, but you remained loyal when life became brutal, when relief was delayed, when explanations never came, and when silence was your only companion. Allah already knew your strength, but what elevated you was the choice you made in that moment where breaking was justified and bitterness was easy, yet you chose patience, restraint, and trust instead. That decision did not just protect you, it rewrote your rank, because warriors of Allah are not defined by how hard they strike, but by how firmly they stand when everything tries to make them fall. Chosen one. The world expected you to strike back, to expose, to defend your name with aggression, and to repay harm with harm. Yet you chose a path so rare that it unsettled both people and the unseen you fought without ever raising your hand. When lies were spoken about you, when your intentions were twisted, when your silence became fuel for others to grow bolder, you resisted the urge to react, not because you lacked power, but because you understood something deeper, that Allah fights with precision where humans fight with ego. You stepped back, while every nerve in your body demanded retaliation. You swallowed words that would have destroyed reputations, and you trusted divine justice at a time when injustice was loud and victory seemed distant. This was not weakness. This was spiritual warfare at its highest level, because restraining the nafs when provoked is harder than striking back, and surrendering your defense to Allah requires a trust few ever reach. The unseen bore witness as you allowed Allah to become your advocate, knowing that no argument spoken by humans can match a verdict written by the Creator. While others mistook your restraint for defeat, Allah recorded it as discipline, wisdom, and unshakable tawakkul, because when you refused to fight in the way they expected and instead fought with patience, dignity, and silence, You demonstrated the mark of a true warrior, one who knows that victory is not taken by force, but granted by Allah at the exact moment He decrees. Chosen one, when compromise became the currency of survival and dishonesty was rewarded while integrity was mocked. You chose purity, even though it isolated you, delayed you, and cost you things you desperately needed, and that choice marked you as different in a world that thrives on shortcuts. Surrounded by environments where morals were flexible and values were sold for convenience, you refused to bend your principles for acceptance, refused to dilute your faith for approval, and refused to stain your character just to belong, even when remaining clean meant standing alone. You watched others advance by deception while your path felt slower and heavier. Yet you did not envy their progress nor imitate their corruption, because your loyalty was to Allah, not outcomes. This level of sincerity is rare, and it shook the unseen because purity under pressure is more beloved to Allah than worship performed in comfort. While others justified their actions with survival, you trusted that risk does not come from compromise, but from Allah alone. And you held on to truth even when lies would have opened doors faster. You endured isolation, misunderstanding, and inner conflict without allowing darkness to rewrite your nature, proving that your heart belonged to Allah before it belonged to the world. That resistance did not delay your elevation, it protected it, because Allah does not build leaders on polluted foundations, and by remaining pure in a corrupt environment, you showed that your strength was not only in endurance, but in the courage to remain sincere when corruption tried to make you forget who you were. Chosen one. Your faith reached a level most people never experience when the rules of logic stopped working in your life, when sincere effort no longer brought visible progress, when prayers felt unanswered, and when even your best intentions seemed to lead you deeper into uncertainty. Yet instead of walking away, you tightened your grip on Allah. In that season, you were forced to move forward without clarity, without reassurance, and without signs that things would improve. Yet you continued to obey, continued to pray, and continued to restrain yourself from making desperate choices that could have given temporary relief, but long-term regret. You trusted Allah while carrying unanswered questions in your chest, while watching time pass without explanation, and while feeling the weight of delay press against your patience day after day. This was not an emotional trust. It was a disciplined surrender where you accepted that understanding is not always given before obedience, and that faith sometimes means walking in obedience while your heart is still searching for peace. You did not demand timelines from Allah, nor did you accuse Him of forgetting you. Instead, you learned to sit with uncertainty and still call Him Al-Hakim, the Most Wise. You watched others move ahead while your path seemed paused, yet you resisted envy and comparison, believing that what Allah writes for you cannot miss you, even if it arrives late. Every day, you chose restraint over panic, humility over control, and submission over resistance, allowing confusion to strip away your ego and deepen your reliance on Allah alone. This kind of trust is rare because it requires a servant to let go of outcomes, expectations, and even their own understanding of success. And that is why the unseen bore witness, not because Allah doubted your faith, but because you proved it without conditions. While many people obey Allah when they understand His wisdom, you obeyed Him while His wisdom was hidden from you. And that decision quietly reshaped your destiny, because Allah prepares His strongest servants in moments where trusting Him is the only thing left, and you chose Him even when nothing made sense. chosen one. There were countless moments when life pushed you to the edge, when injustice, betrayal, and cruelty surrounded you so densely that the natural reaction would have been anger, resentment, and bitterness, yet you refused to let those dark emotions take root in your heart, knowing that the true battle was not against those who wronged you, but against the poison that can silently destroy your soul if you allow it. Every harsh word, every slander, every betrayal that could have justified hatred, you met with patience and awareness, recognizing that bitterness is a trap that turns victims into victims again and again, that it can twist intentions, blur judgment, and harden hearts to the point where even worship loses its purity. You walked through environments where people expected you to retaliate, to respond with vengeance, to become what you despised, and yet you chose a higher path, a path where silence and forbearance became your weapons, where restraint became your shield, and where trust in Allah replaced the need for revenge. You did not ignore the pain. You acknowledged it, you felt it fully, you let it teach you, but you refused to carry it as a burden that would weigh down your soul, and in doing so, you demonstrated a level of spiritual mastery that few ever achieve. While others allowed bitterness to cloud their judgment and turn them into agents of destruction, you allowed every injury to refine you, to sharpen your patience, to deepen your reliance on Allah, and to expand your compassion in ways that shocked even the unseen realm. Every injustice became a lesson in humility, every betrayal a reminder that true strength is measured by restraint, every insult an opportunity to perfect your character. You preserved your heart in the fire of adversity, choosing healing over hatred, mercy over malice, and growth over grudges, understanding that bitterness may feel justified in the moment, but it will ultimately chain the soul and divert the servant from the mercy, guidance, and elevation Allah has prepared. By refusing to let the darkness of others dictate the state of your heart, you not only protected your spiritual purity, but also created an aura of invincibility, a fortress unseen by the world, but recognized in the heavens, because Allah honors those who rise above the temptations of revenge, rage, and resentment. And so, while the world expected you to crumble under anger or lash out in retaliation, you instead became a living testament to patience, restraint, and divine wisdom, proving that the chosen one's power lies not merely in action or victory over others, but in the ability to preserve the sanctity of the heart amidst the chaos of injustice, cruelty, and betrayal. The unseen witnessed your discipline. The angels marveled at your ability to transform suffering into strength, and your enemies, though unaware, were disarmed by a force they could neither see nor comprehend, a force born from a heart that refused to be poisoned, from a soul that chose Allah over bitterness, and from a warrior who understood that true conquest is not over people, but over the darkness that threatens to consume the human heart. You carried your pain silently, processed it internally, allowed it to teach you humility and wisdom, and by doing so, you elevated yourself far above the reach of hatred, envy, and malice. The world may have expected you to react, to retaliate, to become embittered like the rest, but you transcended all of that, walking forward with dignity, serenity, and an unshakable reliance on Allah's justice and timing. That restraint did not make you weak, it made you unstoppable, because the heart that resists bitterness becomes a heart that nothing in creation can truly harm, a heart that carries the strength of the heavens, the wisdom of the prophets, and the quiet yet undeniable power of a warrior chosen by Allah. And so the lesson remains eternal. Chosen one, no matter how deep the wounds, how loud the betrayals, or how persistent the injustice, you have the ability to remain uncorrupted, to stay pure in heart, to allow mercy to flow where anger might have taken root, and to let Allah turn every hardship, every trial, every wrong into a tool for your elevation, knowing that the heart that refuses bitterness becomes a beacon of light, a fortress of patience, and a testimony of divine wisdom that shocks the unseen and inspires the world. Chosen one. There came a season in your life when the world seemed to turn its back on you, when support disappeared, when allies vanished, when voices that once encouraged you fell silent, and when loneliness pressed so heavily upon your shoulders that even the air you breathed seemed to mock your isolation. Yet in the midst of all that solitude, you stood firm and obeyed Allah with unwavering resolve, proving that the essence of the chosen one is not defined by the presence of others, but by the strength of their heart and the clarity of their connection to the divine. While those around you were swayed by convenience, popularity, or fear, you remained steadfast in your obligations, performing your salah when no one was watching, whispering your dua when the night was quiet and unshared, and submitting fully to Allah's commands, even when doing so isolated you further from the world, knowing that obedience is not measured by the applause of people, but by sincerity and dedication before the one who sees all things. There were countless moments when despair tempted you, when the urge to abandon your path whispered that you were forgotten, overlooked, and misunderstood. But instead of surrendering, you chose patience, awareness, and focus, understanding that Allah's plan unfolds perfectly, even when no human hand is present to guide or support you, and that being alone in your journey is not a punishment, but a preparation for greatness that only those who endure isolation with faith can achieve. You witnessed the hypocrisy, betrayal, and inconsistency of the world around you, yet you refused to emulate it. You observed the failures and weaknesses of people you trusted, yet you did not let them dictate your character, and you learned to rely on Allah alone for protection, guidance, and validation, because you recognize that the true power of the chosen one emerges not when surrounded by followers, companions, or advisors, but when standing in solitude and still walking in obedience, still calling upon Allah, still striving to please Him with every decision, action, and thought. That solitary strength reshaped you, forged your heart in fire, and elevated your spirit to a level few ever attain, because those who obey in isolation cultivate a trust and resilience that cannot be shaken by the opinions, judgments, or rejections of others, and their reward is multiplied in ways hidden from the eyes of the world, yet witnessed fully in the unseen realm. Even when the pressure of loneliness threatened to crush your will, when the temptation to follow the easier, more socially acceptable path whispered in your ear, and when the weight of expectation, both internal and external, seemed unbearable, you did not yield. You resisted the pull of despair. You resisted the lure of compromise, and you resisted the urge to abandon sincerity for convenience, knowing that every act of obedience performed in isolation is recorded, honored, and multiplied by Allah in a way that no act in comfort can ever equal. You learned to embrace silence, not as emptiness but as a space for reflection, growth, and divine communication. You learned to rely on dua and internal resolve rather than external support. And you learned that being alone does not signify abandonment, but an elevated stage in your journey where Allah prepares the servant for leadership, wisdom, and spiritual authority that can only come through tested solitude. In the solitude of your trials, your character was refined, your patience hardened, your reliance on Allah deepened, and your humility strengthened, because the hearts of men can only teach so much, but Allah alone is the ultimate guide, and the servant who obeys Him in the absence of all else reaches a rank of spiritual awareness, resilience, and authority that shocks both the seen and unseen. You became proof that true warriors of Allah do not require validation, affirmation, or support from others to act righteously. Your obedience was authentic because it was chosen, deliberate, and untainted by social influence, and this is why the unseen realm marvels at your steadfastness, because the strength to stand alone and obey faithfully is a mark of the rarest servants, the chosen ones, and the carriers of divine wisdom who will lead, inspire, and guide generations without ever needing the approval of the world. Your solitude became your training ground, your heart became your fortress, and your unwavering commitment became a testimony to the world and the heavens that Allah's chosen servant does not bend, does not falter, and does not abandon the path of obedience, even when every earthly comfort is absent, every human hand withdrawn, and every familiar voice silenced. This is why your journey is unmatched, why your rank is elevated, and why your obedience, forged in the fires of isolation, becomes a legacy that Allah Himself honors, multiplies, and rewards in ways that defy human understanding, proving that standing alone with steadfast devotion is not weakness, but the hallmark of the truly chosen, the warrior who trusts Allah when the world turns away, and the servant whose heart remains uncorrupted even amidst overwhelming loneliness. Chosen one, one of the most astonishing aspects of your journey is the way Allah strengthened you beyond imagination, elevated your rank, and bestowed upon you resilience, insight, and power that left even the unseen realm in awe. Yet despite all of this strength, you never allowed arrogance, pride, or superiority to take root in your heart. And that is the mark of a true servant of Allah, a warrior whose power is tempered by humility, whose victories do not inflate the ego, and whose presence commands respect, not because of force, but because of divine wisdom, manifest in character and action. You witnessed people around you succumb to their own successes, letting achievement blind them to the weakness of their hearts. And you saw others turn strength into domination, arrogance, and oppression, yet you refused to let elevation distort your essence. You understood that Allah grants strength not for self-glorification, but to serve, to protect, to uphold truth, and to embody mercy even in the face of hardship. And this understanding became the invisible shield that kept your heart pure, even as your influence expanded. Every challenge you overcame, every trial you endured, and every enemy you faced could have been an opportunity to harden your heart, to let ego dictate your decisions, or to allow triumph to cloud your empathy. Yet you chose a higher path. You allowed every victory to humble you, every trial to refine you, and every recognition to remind you that your power is a trust from Allah, not a possession of your own making. The world often mistakes humility for weakness and strength for dominance, but you embodied both without compromise, carrying immense spiritual and practical power while remaining approachable, compassionate, and obedient to Allah. And this balance created an aura around you that people could feel even when they could not articulate it, a force that inspired awe, respect, and reverence without a single boast, without a single show of dominance, and without the slightest deviation from sincerity and ikhlas. You resisted the temptations of pride when praise came, resisted arrogance when influence increased, and resisted comparison when others sought to measure themselves against you, understanding deeply that humility does not diminish strength, and strength does not diminish humility, but when combined, they create a servant capable of carrying responsibilities that no ordinary heart can bear. Every decision you made, every path you chose, and every obstacle you overcame was guided by awareness that true power is measured not by fear imposed upon others, but by the ability to remain just, patient, and righteous while holding authority, not by the control you exert, but by the mercy, integrity, and moral clarity that accompany it, and not by the accolades you receive, but by the sincerity of your intentions before Allah, the one who truly sees all things. Even in moments of triumph, when the world might have whispered temptations of pride into your ear, you remained vigilant, self-aware, and anchored in faith, because you knew that power without humility corrupts, influence without conscience destroys, and elevation without submission misguides. And you refused to allow any of these traps to touch your soul. Your strength became a shield, not just for yourself, but for those around you. Your humility became a guide, not just for your own character, but for the hearts of others. And together, they formed a legacy that is both feared and loved, respected and revered, celebrated and unassailable. This balanced strength tempered by humility is rare, it is precious, and it is exactly what Allah intended for His chosen ones, because only those who can wield immense power without succumbing to ego are capable of executing divine missions, influencing generations, and upholding justice in a world that constantly challenges virtue. And so, as you stand today, battle-tested, elevated, and recognized, your example is a testament to the unseen realm and to humanity alike. The true warriors of Allah are not defined by their ability to dominate or control, but by their ability to remain grounded, obedient, and compassionate, even as their strength grows beyond measure. That the chosen ones are those who become powerful without losing their softness, courageous without losing their conscience, and victorious without losing their submission to Allah. And that the highest form of mastery is not conquering the world, but conquering the nafs in such a way that every act of power radiates mercy, every triumph reflects integrity, and every influence magnifies the remembrance and obedience of Allah. You became that warrior, and in doing so, you have written a story that shocks the unseen, inspires the present, and will guide generations yet unborn, proving that strength and humility are not opposites, but twin pillars upon which the chosen one stands unshakable, uncorrupted, and eternally aligned with the divine will of Allah. Chosen one. Take a moment and feel this in your heart. You have walked paths that most cannot even imagine, endured trials that would break ordinary souls, and stood firm when the world turned against you. Yet through it all, Allah never abandoned you, and your faith never wavered. The lessons you have embodied, the patience when breaking was justified, the restraint when the world demanded retaliation, the purity in a corrupt environment, the trust when nothing made sense, the ability to resist bitterness, the courage to stand alone, and the strength to remain humble. These are not just stories of survival, they are testimonies of divine favor, proofs that you are among the chosen ones, whose journey surpasses human understanding. Every struggle you faced was preparing you for elevation. Every silent victory was a sign of unseen honor, and every act of obedience, restraint, and sincerity has been recorded by Allah, multiplied in ways that the world cannot see, but that the heavens have celebrated. So stand tall, for you are a living monument of patience, courage, and divine alignment. Let no one diminish your worth. Let no hardship shake your faith, and let no voice distract you from the path that Allah has chosen for you. Remember, you are not just surviving, you are leading, guiding, and inspiring, carrying a power that comes from the one who controls all things, the one who sees what no one else sees, and the one who has always been with you, even when it felt like you were alone. Carry this truth, chosen one, in your heart always. You are the warrior Allah trusted, the servant He honored, and the force that the world cannot comprehend. And because of this, your journey, your struggle, and your triumph will leave a mark that eternity itself will recognize.